Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Today, I'm very excited. We have a doctor in the house today. He is an educator, a trainer, a creator, speaker, and he's a doctor of education, focusing on educational leadership. And what he does is he specializes in facilitating discussions and bringing like-minded people together to create a real impact. Very excited to be rocking out today with Dr. Keith McNally. Hey, Keith, are you ready to rock?
I am ready to rock, Tim. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you in conversation today.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you here. So we always start off here on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we could be inspired by.
Success in my business. So, right now, my business is all about having conversations. And I tell you what, the best way to have a really good conversation is to invest in people. And so, this really started, you know, at the tail end of COVID and the quarantine, and I started reaching out to people on my LinkedIn network list because at that point, people were just profile pictures and just data sheets, and that wasn't working for me. So I really needed to kind of make a change in what I was doing because I wanted to, expand into speaking, and I've got a book over here that I hopefully we get a chance to talk about. And so I wanted to make some significant changes in my life. And the only way to do that was to get connected. And so for me, I just started tapping on people's virtual door on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, do you want to have a conversation?" And it just so happened that we were all at home because quarantine shut us down and COVID kind of took a lot of the normalcy of our lives away. So I just started tapping on people's doors and say, "Do you want to have a conversation?" And people were saying, "Yeah, actually, I do." And so it wasn't everybody. It was kind of a slow start, but the momentum kind of picked up, and those conversations uh, actually became very intentional because people were making pivotal changes in their lives, and they actually wanted to share that information. Like whatever was going on, whether they had lost whatever COVID took away, or their lives at that point were successful and then COVID stopped it all, people were saying, "I need to be different. I want to be different." Their lives that they had accumulated to that point weren't aligned with their values or who they wanted to be. And so they were making real changes. And so that's really where, my first podcast, The Question Guy, came to be, is because people were making awesome changes. And we just needed to share that with the world.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, and you know what? People are starving for conversation, I think. It's one of those things where I know when I used to work in sales and you're super scared to go talk to somebody because you're just worried about what they're going to say or what they're going to do or they're going to reject you or whatever it is. But then, I
Yeah.
always found every time I'd go up and talk to somebody, people love talking, especially about themselves. So if you ask them questions
That was,
about
yeah.
themselves, they'll love it. Uh, but it's definitely something that's not really something to be scared of. Like talking to other people is something that they probably want. Like you say, not everybody. People are in weird places sometimes, but for the most
Mhm.
part, especially in a situation where there's a lot of changes being made, people like to share that information.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so what I was finding is the people were making, the people I was having conversations with were making very specific changes. And so it was about, for some people, it was they had accumulated success. They had been successful, corporate ladder, good, on the outside, the white picket fence, whatever that looked like, your house, your family. But again, on the inside, it was they were empty, they were frustrated, they were scared, they were vulnerable. And this really allowed people, and we often blame COVID for this complete disruption in humanity. But I think for those who took it as an opportunity, really did so intentionally. And so we saw this as, well, what can I do with my time? What value can I add to my life, my family's life, my neighborhood, and the world? How can I make real impact and change? And they were making specific they were then taking a journey. And I'm using specific words because they're all in my book. And so please forgive me. But they were actually going on this path that were going to lead them to something that they felt that they could add value to everybody. It wasn't just about maybe making that sale, but it was about making the connection with that person to not just make that sale the one time, but have a continual partner, maybe ongoing. And so, yeah, it just became a fun ride. So since 2020, 2021, I've been making investments in people. So I've started sharing my story. And so my story includes two suicide attempts and a heart attack at this point. I'm a year gone or a year past. I'm a survivor of a heart attack for a year. So, so far, so good. I wake up every day just, taking that first deep breath consciously and, going about my business, seeing what next, what conversation can I have today? What can I add to somebody else's life that will make them better, feel valued, and feel important?
So powerful. And I think you're right. That whole lockdown thing was it was just such a pattern interrupt. And I'm noticing a lot of things like our media for the most part, our advertisements, our consumption world, tells us what they sort of like paint this picture, maybe even hypnotize us into thinking that all these things are going to make us happy and fulfilled. And so we go after them thinking that that's
Mhm.
going to fulfill us, and then it doesn't, right? And I think that, I mean, if you look into lots of people's stories, you'll find that there was some event that happened that made them realize that this is not what's important in the world, right? And they
Yeah,
make a big
yeah,
change. And I think that the lockdowns and COVID really was one of those. It was this mass event that woke a lot of people up at the same time, kind of going like all of a sudden everybody's like at home with their family and they're like, wow, this is kind of good. I'm not at work doing all the big hustle stuff that I'm supposed to be doing, but I feel better somehow. What's going on here? And I think it just allowed people to kind of look inside a little bit and go, maybe what I've been sold is not really the dream, right?
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think that's you're on target there. But I tell you what, the path to making that transition from what you were accustomed to or what we were accustomed to something new, whatever that is. And we don't
Mhm.
always have the picture.
No.
I speak to a lot of people who are vision board coaches, since the book The Secret came out, and there's this concept that we can, if we envision it and then we plan it, we could achieve it.
Yeah.
Now, on the broad scale, yeah, but it takes a whole lot of work. And so that work does put us in a place of discomfort,
Yep.
risk, challenge, because everything that we were, brought up to believe, like you said, we're a consuming world, at least here in America and so forth. That, if I achieve things, I'm good.
Hmm.
But what it turned out is that humanity, the essence of our humanity, snuck up on us and said, not quite. We need to do some more work. And so that's really where the pivot, I think there's a social consciousness that has kind of transformed, I think, a great deal of humanity at this point is that we're now looking for those things that are valuable. And we don't find those values in owning five cars or the most expensive car or the biggest home. Not that those things are bad, but the value is the connections and the impact that we're making person to person. And so many people who made those personal transformations, those personal changes into whatever they wanted to become, then flipped the coin and became coaches, certified or whatever that space looked like, meditation, yoga, uh, life coaches, whatever that coach title looks like, they found a way that if I could do it, if I could go through the process, if I could go through the change, if I could go through the hurt, and I could achieve success on the other end, because I'm better for it, they're teaching other people to do the same. So it's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and we do need that because that's the thing is that once you sort of have that awakening moment where you realize that, the secret isn't just going and getting things, right? It's there's something else. Then you got to figure out what that is. And it's probably unique for everybody. And
Yeah.
it's a big journey and it's scary because all of a sudden, we're sort of like laid out with this framework, which makes us feel comfortable. We're like, I know what to do, right? But then all of a sudden you don't know what to do, and you've got to go figure that out. And I
Mhm.
think that, would you say that coach tells you what to do, or what are they? Are they more of a guide? How does that work?
So there are coaches out there that I've had conversations because I've got two, now three different podcasts. And so when I talk to coaches, it's a mixed bag. And so some coaches walk you through are dedicated to the recipe. And so uh, they're going to throw out, we do X and then we do Y, then we do Z, and then we follow through and we do all those things. And yet at the same time, I've talked with people who have really indicated that it's really about a maturation process. And so the coach is acting as uh, the potential or the possibility of what's next. And so, okay, if you do this, what do you think is going to be the outcome? And if you do this, what do you think is going to be the outcome? So less cookie cutter and more, let's do that deeper dive. Let's go in and say, okay, because we are holistic people. We are spiritual, we are physical, we are intellectual, we're cognitive, emotional, and social, and all those kind of things. And so we really need to tap into from a coach's perspective, all of those aspects. Because if we leave one out, we're really doing a disservice to the client, to somebody who are really trying to make their lives better. But it's not for us to tell them that this is what better is. Better is what you think better is. And our job, both me and those who I've talked with, saying our job is to kind of lead them along a path. They got to make the mistakes. They got to think it through. They've got to go through the hurt. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's like, God, I got to do this. And yeah, you got to do it because I know it hurts. I know it's frustrating. But on the other side of that hurt, on the other side of that pain, there is purpose and there is passion. And so when they hear that, they're better able to make the steps forward, to take those steps forward. I got a story around this, and so I don't know if you want to hear it or not. It's not my personal story. It's a story that I've heard, but I love sharing it. But that's on you. It's up to you.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So the story is this, and I talk when I get to state, be on stage and stage talk. A lady, she goes to this week-long retreat, right? And this week-long retreat is intentional. She knows that by investing her time, energy, monies, she's going to be different on the other end of it, right? Part of the retreat, so this is, on premise somewhere remote, and you've got to walk over these hot burning coals. Now, I've never done this, and so I don't know what that's like, but you could get into a very meditative state and it's not going to affect you. It's not going to physically hurt you. But the story goes like this, and all week long, so it's a seven day retreat. And so all week long, the trail of hot burning coals was very minimal. Starts off at 5 feet, goes to 10 feet. But on day seven, and so on day seven, it's 40 feet long, right? That's intimidating. 40 feet of hot burning coals is intimidating. And she tells the story that when she walked up to the line, the starting line, she convinced herself she couldn't do it. She convinced herself, even though all week long they've been doing it, life's been good, she's growing, she's excited. It took somebody else, another participant, to tell her, you can do this. And when she heard that, it clicked. She convinced herself she could do it. She knew she could do it. I mean, somewhere deep down, she's already done it. She's already done the smaller trails. She walked 40 feet over hot burning coals, barefoot. Did it, transformed her life. That is where the impact happens. It's when you could come together, again, investing in others, going back to what I originally said. The participants invested in each other. And this one person told this other person, you can do it. And guess what? She did it.
Hi, my name is Anik Malaf. I'm from Mastering Ascension, and I've been working with Tim Melanson and the Creative Crew Agency for a number of years now. Tim is my go-to guy for all things technology, and his team have helped me to really create the platform that I need that represents my brand, my message, and connects me directly to my ideal clients. What I particularly love about Tim is before he starts to dive into the technology, he always makes sure that he understands what your global view is, what your ultimate goals are. So then that way you're not wasting a lot of time back and forth switching around technology or platforms. He creates something from the get-go that is scalable, which is highly beneficial for any business. What I've experienced from Tim and his team is they're highly responsive. They are a wealth of information, and they're going to offer you the tools that you need to really make the mark that you want to make in the world. So that's my recommendation for Tim. He's awesome. You're going to love every minute. You won't regret it.
Yeah. Well done. Awesome. So now let's talk a little bit about getting fans in your business. So how do you build an audience and make them like you?
I wish I had the secret sauce to that, but I really don't. To get people to like me, I just it's all the same. It's investing differently because what I found, and this is because I have many conversations. I've got three different types of shows, one personal, one professional, and one on impact and change, is to really listen to people. Um, Now I know that, coaches, listen and they're trained to listen. And as a college professor, I'm kind of trained to listen. That's where my doctor comes in. Um, but I don't know. Some people can be trained and really, like a therapist can be trained to kind of look at the nonverbals and the nuances of character and what a person is doing as they're communicating. And, we can listen to things and listen for tone inflections and changes and how they're using their words and what words they're using and what words they're not using. These are things that you can be taught, and there are academic studies on this. I've gone through some of those classes, but then some of it is innate. And I tend to fall on, I tend to think of myself as an innate listener, meaning that I'm going to pick up on things and my brain just records things when I hear them. I hear people say things and they just stick with me. It's not necessarily a photographic memory, but it's something that I am good at. And so when I'm having conversations with people, whether recorded or not recorded, I'm really listening to what exactly what I just said, what they're saying, what they're not saying, what they're more excited to talk about, what they're leaving out in a conversation. And so all those things are important. So when you are able to reflect back in that conversation, and somebody's, they won't say it out loud, but they're thinking, well, sometimes they will, because I've had people say, nobody's ever asked me that question, or, nobody's ever put it, reflect it back in that way before. And so when you're able to do that, and I think podcast hosts, some of them are really good at doing that, some of them not so much. Um, and you're being heard, that's when you win people. That's when you win fans, because that person knows you're actually listening, you're present in the moment, you're here now, nothing else is important. Like, I know what's going on downstairs in my house. But right now I'm present with you because the conversation that we're having is what's important. Everything going on downstairs in my house is normal. So I hear what you're saying, you hear what I'm saying. We are engaged in the present moment. And when somebody knows that you're actually paying attention to them, that's one of the most important things in the world.
Sounds like a secret to me. Well done. So now let's talk a little bit about your tool. You mentioned that your podcast. So tell me about, what has that done for you, and how do you use that to your benefit?
Well, for the audience, can I just, well, I already gave out the shout out. And so I do the Question Guy podcast and I branded myself the Question Guy. And that was birthed from COVID and the quarantine. That was about people's personal transformation stories. And it still is. And so people join me in conversation to talk about what that pain to purpose, that trial to triumph, whatever that looks like. And we have a 30-minute conversation and we talk about that. And people have some really gut-wrenching stories, whether they're specifically COVID related or not, doesn't matter. So we have those stories. From that, like I said, a lot of people have used that transformation to become a coach, a speaker, a small business owner, whatever. But Coach's Corner is really about what you do professionally and how it's impacting others, to make change. And then from all of that, the conception of the Envision Speakers Series was really about finding people who were making communities better. Where are they? But because I still work a 9 to 5, and so I kind of have to do everything virtually, I did a little pivot and kind of really start thinking about this as how we can be emotionally better. But I'm thinking I'm going back to so I'm rebranding the Envision Speaker Series because we can make change, we can empower people right where they're at, and that's really most important. I use my podcast to make those connections happen. And so given that I've got almost 200 amongst the three shows, I've had 200 recorded conversations and many, many more not recorded. I connect people with people. I make real connections with other people, friendships, partnerships, co-authored, looking to co-author a couple books in the future, developing master classes. And, it's really kind of, I use the podcast for what it's meant to be, and it's making connections.
Love it. Right on. So now you mentioned that, well, you're a teacher, you're a professor, and so obviously you must see the value in learning and in teaching. But I'm wondering for you, do you hire coaches? Do you participate in that kind of stuff yourself?
Like, why would I go out and actually hire a coach to teach me how to do something?
Yeah.
No. Coaches are expensive. And so I say that with tongue in cheek. I have I have had so many conversations and have purchased or have been given, the books that coaches have written. Here's my poor English, and I'm a doctor. Um, that I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good read, and so I'll read. I've got a book. People have got a book. I don't know if you've got a book, but I'll read it if you do. Um, I read lots of books, and I have those conversations because once read the book and we could kind of get in, you know, all I need is a tip. If I just need to do something, I'm stuck in this situation. You know, and I won't phrase it as if I need it because we'll talk about it on Coach's Corner. And I'm saying for the audience, what tip would you give them to make their life better today? And so I could kind of squeeze that out of them a little bit. Now, those who are listening to this conversation and know that I do that, they already know that I do that because it's for everybody. And it's not so much that, we're giving something away. It's really, we're giving that piece of value away that it's so valuable that people who are listening want more of it. And so they know to either go to me or go to the person I'm having a conversation with and saying, hey, I heard you on, Dr. McNally's show. Can we have a conversation, please? I need some help. And so, yeah.
That's a pretty cool tip. So instead of having to hire your own coach, you can start your own podcast and start asking experts the questions that you want answered.
That's exactly right. That's perfectly the way to do it. That is the way to do it.
Awesome. Right on. Well, it's time for your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business and your life.
I got a book. I got a
Tell me
book.
about it.
So it's Walking the Path: A Leader's Journey. It's been out for almost a year. So it came out December 2022. And it's really about making an impact, but not from the logistical things that an entrepreneur or a leader needs to do in that space. This is really about that transformation process that the leader or the entrepreneur or the person needs to go through to become that person that's going to be the impact player. And so it says a leader's journey because you do have to step into a quote unquote leadership role, whatever that looks like to you. Now, that could be a leader of one. You need to make the right decisions at the right time for the right reasons. That could be a leader of a small team. That could be a leader of a small or large organization. It doesn't really matter. This is about learning the value of what a mentor is and how that works and what it means to be a mentee and a mentor. I talk about communication streams and how clear communication is important. Um, I talk about what it means and how to build a team. I talk about what it means to become vulnerable and really to deal with your emotions as the individual, because without that, if you're just making snap, irrational decisions, nobody's going to follow you and nobody's going to respect you and nobody's going to trust you. So you have to go through those personal changes to be a person that's likable, trustable, and go forward. Now, the book is designed where it's contextual. So there is some academic, but it's not an academic textbook, meaning that I talk about the idea of mentoring. And so I frame that. And then I go into, the fable or the narrative. So there's actually a fictional story wrapped in the context. And so this takes us through a journey of John. John's a 17-year-old boy turning 18 and has to make real changes in his life. He either can stay where he is in the world and take over his daddy's farm and do all that kind of stuff. And God, he doesn't want to do that. He wants to find out what it's like over the other side of the mountain because he's never been and nobody in his village has ever been. And so he's getting really frustrated. And so he, confides in his mentor and says, if I stay here, I'm going to die. And I need to know what's on the other side. So the mentor says, I support you. Find yourself a team, make a plan, go for it. And so with those three things are embedded in the book. And so at the end of each chapter, I give Q&A time. I actually can't require them, but if you're actually invested in the book, the Q&A part, takes you back into the story and says, if you were this person, put yourself in this situation. And finally, the last page of each chapter it says, take note. It's your personal journal in the book. And so it's a little bit of everything. And this is, here's the Q&A. Here's the Q&A of one of the chapters. And then, of course, quite literally it says, take note. So the page is empty. So you could write down your thoughts on what was occurring inside that chapter. So I push it, that's kind of the curriculum for my coaching program, but more importantly, I get very little of the proceeds from the book. The book's proceeds actually go towards suicide prevention services locally here in Virginia. But only because I've been in that place and I don't want anybody else to be in that place. And so I need to support those structures and those services and do at least this way.
All right. So where do we find book?
Amazon, please. That's about it. I want Amazon so if you buy it, please leave a really cool review on Amazon. That's really my go-to at this point. Everything I'm doing, I'm building slowly but steadily. So, the rabbit and the hare, or the tortoise and the hare, whatever that. I'm the slow guy. I make things happen, but just a little bit at a time.
Awesome. So now, other than Amazon, is there any other way we can find you? Like, if somebody wants to connect with you, how do they do that?
I would just ask, please go to my YouTube channel. So everywhere on social media, which is typically two places, YouTube and LinkedIn, it's Dr. Keith McNally with the DR, not the whole word doctor. So DR Keith McNally. I got a YouTube channel, building that slowly, but if you could subscribe, I'd appreciate it. If you want to connect with me directly, have a conversation or any way engage with me professionally, please, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Dr. Keith McNally.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure being here.
Awesome. To the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.